This is Josh Kidd, and this is the second video covering the initial data import into your HandsOn Connect system. In this video, I'll be going over the organizations table, the contacts table, and the locations table. I've already got open here the master field list, which we'll be referencing as I go through these tables, and each of the individual tables. But you can open any of them from these links here on this Zendesk post. Let's start with the organizations table. The first column here is the organization ID, and this needs to be a unique ID and can be anything as long as it's unique. If you have an ID already for your organizations, that's fine to use here. If not, something along the lines of OR 0001 incremented for each one is fine. The second is organization name, and this just contains the name of the organization. And then third is the address visibility, which you can see here is filled in as city and zip only. Address visibility is a pick list field, and there are two options for it. Let's look at the master field list. So you can see here in the master field list, address visibility, it's listed as pick list, and display full address and city and zip only are the two options. So what goes in that column has to be one of those two things. If you're not sure, go with the default value, which is city and zip only. Next we have impact area, which is a multi-pick list. As you can see on the master field list, there are a lot more options that can go in there. See, here's impact area, here's multi-pick list, and here are all the options. Now, a multi-pick list means that it can have more than one of these options. If you have more than one, they should be separated by a semicolon. In the example here, you can see this organization, their impact area is both arts and culture and children and youth education, and they're separated by a semicolon. Next is the organization record type, and this is going to be either nonprofit or business, depending on which this organization is. And then primary address, billing or shipping. It doesn't matter what you intend to use as long as you're consistent here. Probably you'll only be using billing or shipping, and make sure that you fill those fields in later on. The billing address fields or the shipping address fields, and put the corresponding value in this column, the primary address column. And the last one I want to look at here is status, which again in most cases is going to be active partner if the organization here is a partner agency. But there are some other options. Let's take a look at that. So they can be pending, active partner, active sponsor, or inactive. Active partner is for nonprofits and active sponsor is for businesses. And this what this is referring to specifically here is the record type. So if you got nonprofit in here, they should be active partner, and if you got business in here, this should be active sponsor. There are a lot of other fields here, but these are the required ones. The other one that I'll bring your attention to really quickly here is the primary contact. And note that what's in here is the unique ID for a contact in the contacts table. And this is important, and we'll take a look at the contacts table now. So you can see that this ID here, the CO0001, corresponds to an ID in the contacts table here, this first column. Again, this is exactly the same as the organization. If you have a unique ID for each of your contacts, you can use it. Otherwise, any ID will do. CO0001 incremented is fine. First name and last name. It's like the name for organizations. This should be fairly straightforward. Then we have organization ID. And this is an ID that goes back to your organizations table. For example, you can see here the first one is OR 0001, which means it corresponds to this first one in the organization list. If somebody is a primary contact for an organization, their organization ID should be that organization that they're primary contact for. The other option here, if you're not putting in an organization ID, is individual. And this is if you have a volunteer or somebody who's not associated with a particular organization. You fill in individual to indicate that. Primary address and primary phone. Again, this is like primary address for the business. You'll have multiple options for addresses. Let's go up here. So home or business. Again, your volunteers will mostly have their home address filled in. Your agency contacts will mostly have a business address filled in. So that tends to be what you'll fill in here for primary address. For primary phone, that can be business, mobile, home, or other. It's whatever that contact prefers. And make sure that if this is filled in as primary phone home, that there is an actual phone number in that home phone field. Record type ID for the contacts, this is always volunteer. There's only one record type, so just fill it in all the way down with volunteer. And then volunteer type. In most cases, this is going to be volunteer as well. If you have somebody who's trained as a volunteer leader, you might fill in volunteer and volunteer leader, as in this row here. But in most cases, this is just going to be filled in volunteer all the way down as well. Email and username, not strictly required fields, but are good to have. If you want this person to have a user in your HandsOn Connect after they go live, the username field needs to be filled in. And in general, the username field is an exact copy of the email field. Usernames for HandsOn Connect correspond to email addresses. And the last one I want to look at here is birth date. Birth date is not a required field, but we recommend it since volunteer opportunities are restricted based on age. It's good to have something in here. Even if it's, not an exact birth date, if you know somebody's age and can guess an approximate birth date, you can fill that in. And if you do that, there's a field further down called calculated birth date. Just fill in true here if it's an estimated birth date and not an actual one, so that you know that going forward. And the last table I want to look at for this video is the locations table. Again, ID, same as organizations and contacts. Name, straightforward. This might be the name of the organization that's at that location. Or sometimes people will put the street address, since that's an easier way to identify a location. It depends on whether your organizations have more than one location or not. Next is the organization, and again, an organization ID goes in here, not an organization name. Zip code and zip postal code, these should be exact copies of each other, and what we're looking for here is the 5-digit zip code, not the 9-digit one. Then city, country, state, street, those are all address fields that should be fairly straightforward. Special directions, if there's if there's something that the people who are going to this location need to know, like park in the lot behind the building, fill that in here. Google Map URL can be left blank, that's calculated automatically. And latitude and longitude can be left blank as well. We'll calculate those and fill those in. And so those are the first 3 tables. We'll be covering other tables in later videos.